welcome to day 5 of our first virtual Gael Ard Fheis. You're very welcome here this morning. Today we are talking about a topic that has dominated much of the political discourse over the last number of years. It's something that was hot on the doors in the general election, and it's a hot issue on the doors in Dublin Bay South at the moment in the by-election too. It is, of course, housing. And we have with us today two ministers with a lot of experience in this area. We've Minister of State Peter Burke, who's currently in the Department of Housing, Minister of State Damien English, who was, of course, previously in the Department of Housing, along with Owen Murphy. So they've a wealth of knowledge about what it is that Fine Gael are doing on the ground and through legislation to make a difference when it comes to tackling the housing crisis. I'm Emer Higgins. I'm a Fine Gael TD in Dublin Midwest, and I sit on the Housing Committee along with Senator Mary Siri Carney and Senator John Cummins, who's our housing spokesperson, who you'll hear from a little later on as well. I've been out canvassing quite a lot with James Gagan in Dublin Bay South, and what I'm finding on the doors when people talk about housing is sometimes people are kind of spouting back to me what Sinn Féin are spouting out. And really a lot of that is based on cynicism, it's not based on fact, and it's based on populism. And I guess what I want to make sure is that this session showcases what we as a party are doing at a national level to tackle the housing crisis. I think it's really important that all of us as members, as councillors, and as Oireachtas members know what it is we're doing as Fine Gael party in government, so that we can defend our record, that we can promote what we're doing, and so that we can challenge all the myths that are out there, that are being put out there by the opposition parties. So when I'm asked about it, I always talk about the 5 things that we have done in the past year. So in the last year, we've announced the Shared Equity Services Scheme. And this is for people who want to buy a home privately, but who want to be able to do it at an affordable rate. It's effectively giving them a subsidy to achieve that. And the second thing that we're doing is the local authority-led or council-led affordable housing scheme, where we're developing, on top of what's happening in terms of developing affordable houses on publicly owned land, it's also providing local authorities with the funding to achieve it everywhere. And the third thing that we've done is that we're extending the developers' requirements when it comes to the Part 5 obligations. So currently, developers need to develop 10% of their developments as social housing. But now, going forward, they're going to need to develop 10% social, but also 10% affordable. We've also taken action when it came to vulture funds who were bulk buying housing estates, and we heard that quite a lot in Maynooth and in the media. We took action from both a taxation perspective, but also through the announcement of an owner-occupier guarantee scheme that's coming down the tracks. And the fifth thing that we've done is that we put a legislative backing and funding, a multi-billion euro funding to the Land Development Agency. And all of these, I think, are underpinned really by 2 major legislation pieces that are going through the Houses of the Oireachtas: the Land Development Agency Bill and the Affordable Housing Bill. And ministers, this is where I want to bring you guys in, because you guys will have worked on these bills, you guys will have worked on all of what went into making them happen. So maybe Minister Burke, I might go to you first in terms of the Land Development Agency Bill, and then Minister English, if you could talk to us about the Affordable Housing Bill, that would be great. I guess our members are wondering what this means to them, what it means to their children, what it means to people who want to be able to aspire their own home. And we in Fine Gael want to give people that opportunity. So Minister Burke, I'll hand it straight over to you.
Thank you, Deputy Higgins, and it's great to see everyone, even though it is virtually. Yes, there's a lot of exciting work going on in government regarding housing, and I think in the first instance, we are all so aware how urgent it is, the frustration that people have on the ground when we're interacting with our constituents. And as I do in my clinic at home, like everyone else that interacts with people, there's huge frustration there. But we are doing so much, and we have come from such a pressurized point over the last decade when our country, our economy had not got the capacity to deliver housing at scale. And that's one point that we should always be very clear on, that, in government, Fine Gael has really prioritised the delivery of social housing. We've met all our targets under Rebuilding Ireland. The key thing is, unfortunately, it isn't enough to meet the demand we were given in society, because our country wasn't building houses for such a long period of time throughout the recessionary period, unfortunately, when we hadn't the capacity. So I think Minister Murphy and indeed Minister English devised a strategy in terms of the Land Development Agency, which will be a key state actor coming into the marketplace, delivering social, affordable and cost rental homes at scale for all our citizens. And the bill is currently going through the Oireachtas, and one of the key things is, in terms of the affordability measure, all our state lands that are currently occupied by various state agencies and our local authorities will be compiled in a register. That work is actually nearing completion at the moment, and the LDA will assess that into two categories to see what land that we have in the state we have control over that should be suitable for housing and that the state can deliver. And one thing I think is, when other developers and those who have land see that the state is coming in at scale, opening up pipelines to supply social and affordable homes, it will encourage the private sector to get moving quicker, because demand obviously will be met by supply. And once that starts to happen at scale, that will change things, I think, on the ground for all our citizens. And one of the key metrics that we're going to use is that in terms of the valuation, to reduce the cost of land, because we know the cost of land is a huge issue in terms of the end output cost of our housing units, is that we're going to have a minimum affordability requirement of 50% on all state lands that are in public ownership. And what that means is essentially that they have to go for affordable use at a minimum of 50%. Plus, as Deputy Higgins quite rightly referred to, we have the 20% in our Part 5. So coupled with the 50% affordable rate through the LDA bill, that will mean that we will have 70% at a minimum that will be affordable or social housing. And that will obviously encourage and meet, again, the huge demand that is there. And since 2016, I think we've made huge inroads in the social housing waiting list. It's dropped by upwards of 30%, but still much more to do. And I think we have to always strike that balance that, not to be shy about talking about the great work we've done, but also keenly aware of the frustrations that are there when you have people who are still trying to get in the housing list. And I think the LDA will obviously be a key actor in providing that opportunity for someone to get the keys to their own home. And obviously those who are also trying to, because we're trying to promote mixed tenancies, obviously as well, which I think is very important and healthy for society indeed, to give those who are trying to reach, get through the macroprudential rules, get on the ladder for their ownership of their new home, because we are a party of home ownership and we make no excuses about that. We really try and prioritise that as well. And I think the Land Development Agency will play a key part in that. So units at scale delivered by the state under this bill will be true in terms of legislation before the summer, and hopefully we'll start to see units on the ground with cost rental this year. We have a number of planning permissions which are true. We have tenders going out in Shangana. We're waiting for decisions on that through deeper in terms of getting the contractor appointed. So huge work is ongoing.
That's fantastic, Minister. And I think it's really important that people are aware of exactly what's going on. And you've so eloquently and accurately outlined exactly what is happening in this area. I know, speaking from my generation, it's such a key issue for people. And the Land Development Agency for people in that situation is going to be a game changer. Up next, we're actually going to go straight to a motion. It's proposed by the constituency of Meath East. And we have on the line with us Councillor Alan Tobin, who's going to propose it, and Miles Riley, who's going to second it. So we might hear from you guys on your motion, and I think Senator John Cummins then is going to respond to it. Over to you, Councillor Tobin.
Thanks very much. I hope everyone can hear me there. I'm wearing my Meath jersey today. I have the colours out. Meath is open for business, so come and visit the Boyne Valley if you can. It's a fantastic place to come to for a day or to spend a holiday. And look, COVID is going to give us a fresh start, I feel. There's new thinking, there's new ideas, there's a new enthusiasm in the country and a can-do attitude. And I suppose local authorities have really stepped up to the plate in the last little while and shown what they can actually do for business and for people in housing situations, emergency situations and things like that. But people will be less tolerant. People want results now. And as you said there, Emer, the big thing at the moment is, the younger generation, they want a home and they want it now and they want it to be affordable. So there are approximately 20,000, I think, at one stage, the count had said vacant homes, and fair deals and things like that were meaning that, some of the houses were becoming vacant, but some weren't. And I suppose we have to solve this crisis, because it's having an effect on families. It means that people are starting families later, having kids later, and that's going to have a knock-on effect on the economy as well, because we know that the birth rate isn't what it was, and we thought we'd get a kick from COVID with people being bored or whatever, but it didn't happen. Look, we've 18 months until Leo becomes Taoiseach, and I think we've probably less time before we run out of time on this, and we need to show results within housing. So the motion, I suppose, reflects that, and the failures in housing can't be a legacy of Fine Gael. We were given a bust economy at the time, but younger people aren't interested in that. They want to see results now. We've allowed housing agencies become very, very powerful in this space, and I suppose local authorities need to do something to reverse that and build houses and stuff like that. We have a lot of people very dependent on HAP. We have people who are just below the threshold where banks won't give them loans, and they've now been pushed onto the Rebuilding Ireland loan, or they just simply can't afford it. So the affordability thing has to happen. The other thing that has to happen as well, I suppose, is that if we are going to try to get vacant homes and other things on or into the supply chain, we need to retrofit those homes. We need to future-proof those homes. So part of the Sustainable Development Goals and for climate change and climate law, which has become law, we need to make sure that those houses are habitable for the future, and that people don't have to move into them and then spend lots of money on them, I suppose, in the future as well. You were talking about 10% affordable. 10% affordable really doesn't cut it with me. I think it should be a lot more. Now, I know that pushes the cost up for the non-affordable, if you like, but it's really, really something that we need to look at, and that we need to step up to the plate on this one. This cannot be our legacy. We need to, as the SDGs say, in particular, no poverty. We need to eliminate poverty, and we need to leave no one behind. So look, that's all I'll speak on the motion, and I'd love to hear your views. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that fantastic and passionate contribution. Miles, would you like to come in on this as well? Oh, Miles, I think you're still on mute.
Sorry, excuse me. Can you hear me now? Yeah. The last census showed that there were 180,000 vacant homes in the state. If even 10% of these homes could be occupied, it would make a major difference to the housing market. I think there are a number of ways in which this can be achieved. First of all, speeding up the grant of probate. A good example of what can be done is the issue of passports in a day to those who apply online. Secondly, simplifying the legal and registration procedures for property transfers will make more homes available more quickly. Thirdly, making amendments to the Fair Deal scheme to make it profitable for patients who are in nursing homes to let their homes. And finally, bringing in a vacant home levy to encourage the occupation of houses. We can, I believe, make an extra 18,000 homes available if we adopt these and similar measures. So I ask all the delegates to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that contribution. And maybe just to remind members who are online that you guys can get involved in this conversation, make comments, make questions on the Hop-In platform. It's just on the right-hand side of your screen. This vacancy issue is something I hear Senator John Cummins speak about all the time. So John, I think this is a very appropriate place for you to hop in before we vote on this motion.
Yeah, thanks very much, Emer, much appreciated. And thank you very much to Councillor Tobin and to Miles for bringing forward this motion on behalf of the Meath East Constituency Executive. This is a topic that is very close to my heart. We're making a lot of progress here in my own county of Waterford. But just to say some of the things that have been introduced by government, there is a buy and renew scheme which local authorities can utilise in order to bring vacant premises back into use for local authority tenants. In our cities, we have the Living City Initiative, which is a tax an efficient way of refurbishing properties in designated areas. The CPO process is often fraught with dangers for local authorities in terms of the ability of them to rack up high legal costs. And I know that's a challenge that we are looking at addressing. But one of the main schemes that is there in place is the repair and lease scheme. The repair and lease scheme provides up to €60,000 per unit of the upfront costs of renovating a property that has been lying idle for at least 12 months. And once they're going to bring it back into use for local authority tenants on a long-term lease, and it's recouped over the course of that lease. In Waterford, Waterford accounts for nearly 50% of all the repair and lease units that are being provided across the whole country, which is actually a shame. It's great for us here in Waterford, but it's a shame for the rest of the country, because we all know that our towns, villages and cities have many vacant properties, and it's having a real impact here in Waterford. We've seen family homelessness reduce between 2017 and 2020. By 90%, and we've seen individual homelessness drop by 55%. And if that can be done here in Waterford, it can be done in every other city and town and village across the country. So we need to have targets in place for local authorities to meet under the repair and lease scheme. And we do have to look at, like Alan said, bringing in measures to make the renovation of properties, and not just for social housing, but for the next cohort of people, the people that are above the income limits for social housing. And that's what we're doing with the cost rental legislation that went through the Shannon yesterday. So we look forward to making a lot more progress in this area, but there has been a lot of progress made, and I look forward to working with the ministers to make sure that that happens.
Thanks so much, John. You're doing fantastic work in this area, and you can really see that Waterford is leading the way on repair and lease. And it's up to all of us public representatives to put pressure on our local authorities to make sure that the uptake is increased in our areas. Glad you spoke about long-term leasing, because I know that's going to be our next motion. But before then, I'm going to put motion 5.1 to a vote. And while we're voting on that, and you can vote in the poll right on the right-hand side. So while we're voting on that, I'm going to call on Minister Damien English, maybe to speak about the Affordable Housing Bill. Thanks, Damien.
Thanks, Emer, and good morning to yourself and to all the team online and everybody viewing in. A couple of issues there, Emer, just to add to the debate, and I'm glad that Minister Peter Burke online was here today, because Peter is driving on now with the progress that was made in the last 4 or 5 years under the previous government with Fine Gael, and he's taken up the mantle now and is driving on the delivery aspect when it comes to social housing and affordable housing. And I think we've brought forward some great plans there. The LDA is essential to the long-term success and permanently fixing housing once and for all in this country as well. So it's great that that's now over the line and in play. The Affordable Housing Bill is coming in. I think it's key to again bring a focus to affordable housing, which was always the intention, we say, of phase 2 of Rebuilding Ireland, was that we would focus in on affordable housing. The key parts on that are the cost rental plans that have just been touched on by your previous speaker. I hope local authorities take up the initiatives there and drive on with them, both using taxpayers' money through the AHBs, through direct funds, but also in working with the private sector to bring forward clever projects there that at good value to the state as well. And reference is made to the following motion about long-term leasing. If with the right design of these plans, they can result in good value for the taxpayer, as well as home ownership at the end. And that's something we want to focus on as well. But a key part, Emma, that was touched on in today's debate and last night's touched on as well, the importance of giving people some hope based on evidence, because there's a lot of people concerned, is there enough focus on housing? Are we going to solve this? I believe we will, and I've no doubt we can, built on the success of the last couple of years. We all totally understand not enough progress has been made yet to secure a home for everybody at the right price and in the right place. But we have to recognise, I think, and Peter touched on this, where we were and where we want to get to. So when Fine Gael took over the housing brief about 5 years ago at this stage, housing supply in the country was under 5,000 houses a year. Social housing was practically zero. So what's happened since that? Housing supply was brought close to, would have been 25,000 only for COVID, but it's over the 20,000, probably 22,000. So take away COVID, it will be at 25,000. It needs to get to 32,000. So I think with the continued focus by Peter and his team in the housing department, we will get to that. But then when we get there, we have to stay at that. And that's what, when we produced the planning framework a couple of years ago, it was committing this country to delivering about 33,000 houses a year, every year for the next 20 years. So once we stay on those plans, and I believe the right decisions have been made by government now to keep us on those plans, that's number one. Number two, the social housing delivery. It was practically at zero when we took up that position in 2016. So you went from zero, and then by 2019, we were delivering over 10,000 social houses. And the money is committed long term now in the national plan, in the national development plan, to continue at a minimum of about 10,000 and to go beyond that in some cases up to 12,000, which is 12,000 social houses across all the schemes, permanent social houses. That's more than what Sinn Féin ever claim that in their promises to deliver, even though they're not doing on the ground. They never say where they'll put them, how they'll do them. We have done it and we'll stick by it as well. What's key now is that we continue to that commitment. And I believe any government that Fine Gael is part of is committed to a social housing programme of up to 12,000 houses a year and every year to build on that. The system, I believe, for social housing is now in place. It's to continue to allocate the money to do that. And that's why you see the current housing budget is nearly 3.3 billion, a massive commitment to housing for this country as well. On top of that then, absolutely, and it was always our commitment at Fine Gael that we would drive the affordable housing agenda. And that's where Peter comes in now to the success of affordable housing in the future is the current legislation. But even as we were fixing housing supply, we did make sure that the Help to Buy scheme was brought in, and that helped 22,000 people over the last 3 or 4 years to buy a house and to access funding to buy a house, and a key success. And they were at affordable prices because they are capped at certain levels as well. We had the infrastructure fund, which also contributed to delivering social housing as well. But the key now is to use state-owned land to be used for affordable housing. We did try some of these models. One of the ones that was successful was the Coonan model in Dublin, which delivered houses under 150,000, but that came at a state subsidy through our departments and through our local authorities of about 70,000 a site. And that's what we will continue to do now right across the country in conjunction with local authorities to deliver those affordable housings. And I believe we can do that, but it's important people understand and have confidence that it does take a little bit of time. Of course, all of us in Fine Gael would wish we could do it a lot quicker, but the key is now to build on the systems and the processes that were put in place to make sure we deliver it into the future as well. You touched on vacancy there. Again, there were initiatives there were tools in place. Some of them are carrot and stick. We want to work with anybody who has a vacant property, and I would ask anybody to come forward, talk to our local councillors, talk to our local authority. There are a range of schemes there that Peter was working with to make it possible to turn an empty house into a house for a family or for somebody else as well, be that the centre of our towns or villages or out in rural areas as well. There are enough schemes there that I think make it attractive for anybody who has a vacant property to bring them back into use as well.
Thanks so much, Minister English. I think you've said the message loud and clear. There's no reason why any building should be lying vacant in the middle of a housing crisis, and we need to make sure that we deliver on that ambition, because that's really important. It's really important to renters like Thelma Harris, who we're going to hear from shortly. Just some breaking news. The last motion has passed with 91.3% of our members in favour of it. Philip Russell has commented that local authorities have to take more ownership of implementing social and affordable housing strategies. And I think that's very pertinent to the discussion here today. So we'll move on to our next motion, which is 5.2. We're going to first hear from Clodagh Murray, and then we're going to hear from Thelma Harris. Clodagh, over to you.
Thanks very much, Emer. Ministers, panellists and delegates, I'm very pleased to propose this motion today on behalf of the Dublin Fingal Constituency Executive. Minister English and Minister Burke would know from having attended some of our constituency meetings that we spent a lot of time highlighting and discussing housing issues over the past couple of years, as I'm sure many other branches and constituencies across the country have done as well. Up until relatively recently, home ownership was very much the norm in Ireland, and buying a house was always considered to be a key milestone in life. But as we all know, for a number of years now, long-term renting has become much more common than it was, particularly for younger people. For many people, renting is actually the only option, as buying a home is so far out of reach for them. We also know that rent prices are extremely high, especially in our cities, and for renters, there is often little guarantee of long-term security in their homes. A study that was completed by Matrix Recruitment last year showed that nearly half of Ireland's workers don't have a private pension. 37% of that group said that bills, particularly high rent, made it impossible for them to afford it. That, of course, very clearly creates a problem. The generation that's now being referred to as Generation Rent have no guarantee of security in their retirement. And as it's so difficult to plan ahead by saving for retirement or contributing to a pension on top of the high rents that already take up so much of their income, it will be next to impossible for many of my generation to afford somewhere to live after they retire. Even with a private pension, Continuing to pay the same monthly rent would be a huge stretch, and I believe that experts consider an adequate pension to be 50% of what you were earning beforehand. And of course, cutting your income in half and being expected to pay the same rent would be extremely difficult. But this isn't just an issue for young people either. We now have a cohort of long-term renters in their 40s and coming into their 50s who might soon be unable to get approval for a 20 or 30-year mortgage. There are also plenty of people who'd love to buy a home, but whose careers aren't considered secure enough by banks to approve them for a mortgage. And that's an aspect that we should be particularly conscious of, considering the rise of the gig economy. Fine Gael as a party prides itself on planning ahead and of thinking of the big picture. We can't afford to wait for this issue to keep growing and leave potentially an entire generation to face it after a lifetime of working. It's something that we need to start addressing as soon as possible. But we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. Plenty of other countries elsewhere in Europe have a longer history of long-term renting than we do, and they can ensure that secure options are available to renters throughout their lives, not just while they're working. Cost rental models like the Vienna model, for example, can work very well, and I welcome the commitment in the programme for government to develop a cost rental model in Ireland too. Through this motion, we're suggesting that the government examines relevant international experiences like these to identify what works for renters, which options could be applicable here, to improve security of tenure and ensure that long-term rental is a realistic and affordable option for those who need it now and for those who choose it in the future. I hope that this motion will have your support. Gur míle maith.
Thank you so much, Clodagh. You've articulated the issue so well and so honestly and so passionately. Up next, we have Thelma Harris on that same motion, and then we'll put it to a vote. Thelma.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So I'm Thelma. I'm originally from Laois and I'm renting in Dublin. And housing is the number one issue amongst my friend group. I would say within our group, there's three types of people. There's those that have maybe returned home to live with parents so that they can save to pull together a deposit, aspiring to own their own home someday. There's those that are renting at colossally high prices and have no prospect of saving for their own home. And then there's people like me that are basically living like perpetual students in house shares in the hope that we can save some small amount to pull together a deposit. So basically that's the challenges that we're facing, and each one of those presents their own individual challenges. Moving back home to your childhood bedroom, paying colossal rent, or just living in a property that's not designed for house sharing, and the impact that has had during COVID. I would say that as we get older and the prospect of owning our own home doesn't seem to be getting any closer, that we're actually, this is felt acutely at a personal level. So, this is the same generation that came through the recession at a very young age and maybe worked through like underemployment or emigrated and returned home. And now we're reflecting on our own position again and saying, well, we've done everything we were supposed to do, and we're still in this situation where the prospect of owning our own home doesn't seem to be getting any closer. And when you look at maybe the person that was 27 when Fine Gael first entered government, they're now 37. And again, the prospect of owning their own home seems to not be getting any closer. So I think what Clodagh has presented here is really important, because those people are going to be really reliant on protection around renting, and to see that as a long-term solution or a long-term situation for them. So yeah, really welcome Clodagh's motion. And also I think it's important to look at renting, because when we talk about housing, and it's coming up again later in one of the motions, the focus is always on families. And there's so many single people out there who, that's just are feeling excluded from the housing policy because the narrative is solely around housing families. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed.
Thank you so much, Thelma, for sharing your own personal experience and reiterating the concerns of generation rent. And you're right, quite a lot of the time when we talk about the housing crisis, we talk about the building of houses. And there's an awful lot of people caught in what is effectively a rip-off rental market. That was something that came up on the doorsteps. It's something our members tell us. It's something that we know is a key and core issue. And I suppose that's why the cost rental mechanisms that both Minister Burke and Minister English and Senator John Cummins all spoke about, where there will be long-term affordable leasing brought in. I think that's going to be really important to people who do want to rent in a kind of a secure environment. And we also, of course, introduced protection measures for people during COVID who are financially impacted due to COVID, to make sure that they weren't able to be that they weren't able to lose their home as a result of that, and protections from evictions, and those protections are still in place. And of course, at the moment, you'll hear a lot of talk about the student renters and the student protections that the government are introducing around capping deposits and reducing the time for notice, I suppose, when you're giving notice. And so I'm going to put this motion, which I think we've heard some really strong contributions on, this motion 5.2 to a vote now. And while we're voting, I'm just going to read some of the feedback in the comments. So Ryan Laffin has asked, are there ways that we could make it financially worthwhile for homes in the Fair Deal scheme to be put on the rental market? Yes, is my answer to that, absolutely. And I know that Minister Peter Burke has spoken to us as a Fine Gael parliamentary party about this a number of times, because it's something that we've all wanted to do as well. And there's obviously a lot of protections for older, in particular older vulnerable people, that need to be looked at as part of that. But I would agree with you on that comment. Councillor Maurice Dockrell of Dunleary Rathdown County Council has said that he believes it is a mistake allowing local authorities to divest themselves of experienced people in house building. He feels that generation has now gone, and the market does certain things well, but that house prices, unfortunately, is not one of them. And we had a question earlier on as well from Mary Thompson, who asked about the role of the state in the delivery of social housing. And so NAMA, she says, is 100% state-owned with no associated debt. Could NAMA not be used in the state in the delivery and the provision of social and affordable homes? Minister Burke, I might bring you back in on that later on once we've gotten through the next two motions. But I know that NAMA is doing a lot of work in this area. And of course, the Land Development Agency is going to be another huge vehicle when it comes to the delivery of social and affordable homes. So we're voting as we speak on motion 5.2, but we're going to go ahead with motion 5.3, which is from the Enniscorthy District Executive in Wexford. First up on this is Councillor Cathal Byrne, followed by Councillor Alan Tobin again. Cathal, would you like to come in?
I agree with Cordia. My name is Cathal Byrne. I'm a Fine Gael councillor, proudly representing the people of the Enniscorthy District on Wexford County Council. 2 years ago at the 2019 local elections, I was privileged to have been elected as the youngest county councillor on Wexford County Council. When I was out knocking on doors, I told people that I wanted to be a voice for their issues and concerns, but in particular, I wanted to be a voice for young people on Wexford County Council. As we emerge from the pandemic, the single biggest challenge facing young people is the issue of housing. Being able to purchase and own your own home should be a legitimate goal of every young person and young family in the country. It's a core belief of Fine Gael as the party of home ownership, and one that all of us at this Ard Fheis take very seriously. Every week at my clinics, I'm contacted by constituents, both my age and older, who tell me their stories about the fact that they often are paying more in rent than they would on a mortgage, and about their struggles to get a deposit together in spite of having a good job. This is where the Help to Buy scheme comes in. The Help to Buy scheme exists to help first-time buyers who are either purchasing a new build, home or apartment, or building their own first house themselves. The Help to Buy scheme gives first-time buyers their own tax money back, both income tax and dirt, for the preceding 4 years, up to a maximum of €30,000, 10% of the purchase price or the value of the property, or the amount of income tax and dirt paid for the 4 years prior to making the application, whichever is the least. This money can then be used as the 10% deposit towards getting a mortgage. Delegates, so far, since its introduction by Fine Gael in 2017, the Help to Buy scheme has helped over 22,000 people and families with a deposit towards purchasing or building their own home. Unfortunately, at present, the scheme is currently scheduled to expire later this year on the 31st of December 2021. Delegates, this morning, I am moving this motion on behalf of the Enniscorthy District of Fine Gael to extend the Help to Buy scheme until the 31st of December 2025, so as to give people, and particularly young people, certainty that they can plan in confidence that the Help to Buy scheme will continue to be available for them as they seek to buy or to build their own home. As a party that believes in home ownership, I urge you to support this motion. Gurv Míle Maith Agóibh.
Thanks so much, Cathal, for a fantastic contribution. Councillor Alan Tobin, would you like to come in on this as well? We seem to be having some technical difficulties there getting through to Councillor Tobin, but maybe for some breaking news, and I hope that Clodagh and Thelma are going to be very pleased with this. I know you felt that you wanted rentals and people who rent firmly on the agenda for Fine Gael. Well, you've been firmly endorsed with a 100% vote. I think it's historic so far in our virtual online Ardette. So congratulations to Clodagh and Thelma on their fantastic contributions on their motion. Unless we can reach Councillor Tobin, we will go straight to vote on motion 5.3 as proposed by Councillor Cathal Byrne. So if people want to vote again in the poll on the right-hand side. We have some more questions or comments in. We have a question from Seamus O'Callaghan, my own constituency of Dublin Midwest. He's asking, is there an issue with unfair competition between individuals and REITs? REITs are exempt from paying corporation tax on rental income and exempt from capital gains tax on disposal. So this, I suppose, has been very much in the news cycle over the last number of weeks. We've had an awful lot of action when it came to REITs buying up and bulk purchasing family homes. But there is still an issue, you're right, around corporation tax and capital gains tax. And I suppose it's balancing the need we have for REITs to be here, to be able to fund the delivery of homes against their purchasing power. But what I'll do once we've done the next and last motion is I'm going to bring Minister Peter Burke, who's the authority, in on that. So Peter, we've two questions for you there that we'll be grilling you on shortly. Andrew Gallagher has also commented about the Help to Buy scheme. He says it's helped many people, but it has also helped maintain high prices. He feels that we should concentrate on reducing costs on the supply side, as we discussed yesterday, instead of pumping money into the demand side. So again, plenty of food for thought there. We're going to go to motion 5.4, which is from the Stanley Lang Willington branch in my neighbouring constituency of Dublin Southwest. And we're going to hear from Niall O'Brien. Niall, would you like to come in? Oh, we must be having more technical difficulties. Niall, I'm not sure if you're on the line.
I don't think he's on the call.
No problem, no problem. Well, listen, we'll come back to that. And in the meantime, Minister Burke, we have those two questions for you. And if you're able to address them for us, we'd love that. That's the question around NAMA and also the question around REITs.
Thank you very much, Emer. And again, great contributions there on all those motions. And what Clodagh and particularly Thelma is going through and articulating is, key to what we're trying to do to resolve that, because in any marketplace where you have demand so much outstripping supply, which we've had over the last decade, we are reversing that so quickly, but it's frustrating in terms of the timelines in doing that. And I can fully understand that. But if it wasn't for COVID, we would have well broken 20,000 houses last year in terms of delivered on the ground. Hopefully this year we're really going to catch up, and you will see results. I can absolutely guarantee you that with all the different schemes we have now, from our shared equity scheme and to the release of our affordable schemes and our Part 5 increases and the LDA coming on, delivering high quality homes at scale. And that's what that's about. And that feeds into the NAMA question. In theory, when NAMA was established, its remit was exclusively to relieve the state of a huge bank of debt that was toxic, get rid of those loans and allow the state access to markets again. Because when it was established, we were locked out of the markets. Subsequently, when we got back in maybe 2014, we were paying 15, 16% of a rate to borrow. So effectively, we were still in a very difficult position and still relying on liquidity from the ECB. So it was really focused on doing that job. And some would criticize NAMA in terms of it didn't focus on, delivery of housing, but while it did deliver homes and land for homes, it wasn't its remit. And that's why Minister English and Minister Murphy have the Land Development Agency. And in theory, the good thing about the Land Development Agency, it will mirror NAMA. The Chief Executive, John Coleman, obviously worked in NAMA, and NAMA had the exclusive remit whereby when it was doing its business, it had the autonomy to go and do about it. And, it wasn't consulting government every week, in terms of what it should package and what it shouldn't in terms of loans. And that's why the LDA will aim to be the exact same, that it will have the autonomy to deliver high quality homes at scale, cutting down on red tape, and it will have frameworks for the public spending code in terms of dealing with the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, frameworks for tendering large scale developments, and those are being worked out at the moment. Again, cutting down timelines that we can process these rather quickly. So to allay your fears, I can absolutely say that the LDA will mirror it in terms of autonomy and in terms of powers to really assemble huge land banks. And secondly, in terms of the REITs, and this has been a huge debate, and if you reflect and look back where we were again in 2011, 12 and 13, we had no investment in our property market. As bad as it is now, it was absolutely dysfunctional then because there was no investment coming into our country. And the legacy we've had is that when we're trying to develop high quality, high density, high rise apartments in our city centres, it was deemed appropriate at that time, to encourage funds to come in, deliver and unlock the potential in these city centre sites, which we can see all around Dublin did happen to that extent. But policies are for a particular time, and when time moves on, they have to be changed. And that's why the government has went about changing that policy in terms of making it very clear, under no circumstances do we want to see funds competing with first-time buyers in the marketplace. That's absolutely an unintended consequence, and we've moved to really change that. But in terms of taxation model that's been spoke about, everyone that has the opportunity or has the chance to go into their private pension, their small pension fund that they pay a few quid into every month, that accumulates without having to pay any tax on it in terms of the fund that it's in. And a REIT is the exact same principle, that it increases if property is sold, once it's not taken out of the fund, it's still increasing in value, it's not suffering tax. But when it is taken out of the fund, it does suffer taxation. And that's the key thing. Sometimes people will try and mislead to say that, there's no capital gains tax, there's no income tax. The model is taxed once it leaves the fund, and there is taxation on that, and there's withholding tax if any country that Ireland hasn't got a tax treaty with, there's significant withholding tax taken from when money leaves the fund. So it is a very controversial topic, but what I would say, appropriately back in 2011, when we had no investment, if we didn't have that unlocked, if you think of a massive block of apartments, to forward fund those, you can't just build 20, sell them to 20 individuals and then build the rest over the next couple of months. With our building regulations, the high spec you have now, and rightly so, you have to have them finished before you can offer them up and obviously get in money for sale for them. So there were, for a time, that time now has moved on, and we're really focused now in having our new homes for our first time buyers. And I think the various different suite of measures that we have and that we're working so hard on will make an impact on the ground, and that Telma will be able to see that, and Claude as well, that you will be able to rightfully have the chance to buy and occupy your new home. And just very finally, in terms of what Telma mentions about single persons, we have a new tool in the department called the Housing Needs Demands Assessment, which really breaks down the 33,000 units that this state requires every year in terms of what type of tenures do we need, what type of houses do we need in what particular areas. And that will give planners, a greater opportunity to really give the output that the demand is in that area. And that will change and shape our policy in housing into the future as well. So we won't have stock that is not needed or that has overcapacity for the particular demand in that area.
Thank you so much, Minister. I think it's great to be able to have the questions that are brought up here by our members answered in such a comprehensive way. Just in terms of motion 5.3, to let people know that that motion has passed by 91%. I'm reliably informed that the Stanley Lang branch are all out on the campaign trail. At the moment, it's James Gagan and Dublin Bay South. So I'm going to read out the motion and we'll ask people to vote on it. So the motion from Dublin Southwest Branch is, in line with the strong commitments in the programme for government regarding the provision of housing, that this Ard Fheis urges the acceleration of actions already underway, the consideration of other ideas capable of rapidly increasing housing delivery, and calls on the government to ensure that the Land Development Agency is properly empowered and resourced to play its central role in increasing housing supply. So again, you can vote on that using the poll in the right-hand side of your screen. And I suppose while we're talking about the Land Development Agency, I think it'd be remiss of me not to ask Minister Damien English for a few words on it, given that he was so instrumental in helping to set it up. And it's going to be a real game changer when it comes to the delivery of houses. And I suppose like the key message we've heard today from our members, from our councillors, from all of our Fine Gaelers is that we want to, and we are committed to resolving the housing crisis for renters, for people who want to own their own home. That's what we want to achieve. And the Land Development Agency is a critical part of the solution. To us, it's all about delivering homes. Minister English, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Emer. I think you're absolutely right. That is the focus of the Land Development Agency. It's the long-term management of land on behalf of the state to deliver on our housing commitments and other commitments as well in relation to town centre and brownfield sites as well. The key here is that we know this, and for a number of years we've worked, and again, the LDA will work very closely with local authorities. It's not to take over from them at all. Local authorities have to be central to deliver social housing, and they are. They're back delivering 10,000 houses plus. Direct build will be close to 9,000 looking in the 12 months ahead. So it's key. So local authorities are central to that, and we believe in Fine Gael they should always be. The LDA is to come in behind that and work with local authorities on their large sites, but also working with all the state agencies and state departments who own other sites, like the Central Mental Hospital site, like the site out in Changana. That's where the LDA will come in, and their role will be to secure housing, exactly what Peter said, to get to that 30,000 plus per year, every year for the next 20 years and well beyond that. And the LDA's role is to take up that mantle now and to make sure that we are delivering in conjunction with the private sector, that the state as a whole delivers 30,000 houses per year every year. And then we will never have a housing crisis again. Their role then is to make sure that our own sites are maximised for the delivery of affordable housing at the right price, in the right place. Also, it's the social housing, and then cost rental models and other models of private sector delivery as well. But they also have a role, though, in compiling sites. So all of us as councillors and as members of Fine Gael look around our towns and villages and cities and see sites that you kind of wonder, why aren't they in use? Well, that's where the LDA can step in, and using their fund of over $1 billion that they'll be allocated by the state to buy up that land, or to make sure the land is assembled in a parcel of land and then delivers on what's needed for the area, be that housing, be it schools, be it other community buildings. That's where they'll have a role in long-term delivery of key sites in all our cities and towns, because we have long-term plans here to develop a lot of brownfield sites and to make sure all that empty land gets used better when it comes to Limerick and Cork and Waterford, Sligo, Athlone, Mullingar, Navan, Dundalk, into Dublin as well, that we pick up and use the sites that have been left neglected, key sites that could deliver housing at the right price in the right place. And that's why I know we can fix housing permanently in this country if we build on our plans that Peter is now bringing through the system as well, and enhancing and delivering as well. So it's key here is that we continue to invest money in housing. We've got it as far as nearly 3 billion. As soon as Fine Gael could raise money, as Peter said, we couldn't when we came into government first, but when we could raise money and capital spend, we have committed it to housing and infrastructure to deliver housing, and we will stick on that journey now. The budget's out over 3 billion. It'll probably go to 4 billion and beyond. The state has to always have a major role in housing delivery across all the levels, and that's the LDA's role to support that work.
Super, thank you. And I suppose local authorities obviously have a key role to play as well. We have on the line with us Councillor Joe Byrne from Galway East. Joe, I don't know if you'd like to make a quick contribution on this and the role you feel that local authorities can play.
Yeah, thanks, Emer. And look, it's very encouraging that we have housing at in the topic that we're talking about. It's homes into the future, and what I'm hearing is plans. And the old adage, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So it's really encouraging to see such a joined up thinking approach between social housing, affordable housing, and of course private. I would just say I'm in my own county in Galway. I'm really enthusiastic when I look at the housing section in Galway. And go back 4 years ago, I think 17 and 18, we delivered less than 60 houses. In 2021 and 22, we're going to deliver almost 500 units. And that's through local authority direct build, turnkeys, acquisitions, Part 5, the proven housing bodies. So this is really encouraging, and it's really a strong message we need to get out there that we are delivering. And the seeds that were sown 5 and 6 years ago are now germinating into plants. Can I just say as well, in my day job, I'm a construction management consultant. I've over 30 years experience in the sector, even working on social housing projects in Dublin at the moment. And like, I see two real challenges. I see a challenge of resources. I really have an issue. I know the ministers talk about delivering 30,000 units a year. And I asked the question in a very constructive way, who's going to build them? And I think that's something that we need to challenge. The whole apprenticeship scheme through Minister Harris. I'd like to see apprenticeship schemes maybe coming through third level bodies in the institutes or whatever. And the other issue is, with my rural hat on me, and it was really welcome to hear the Help to Buy scheme motion. But if we think of a lot of young couples in rural Ireland, they want to build on their lands. And I think we have a challenge to ensure that young couples are allowed planning permission to build on their farms or on lands within their area. And the National Planning Framework, Objective 19, is really challenging us on that under the economic and social need. So I think, and I say to the ministers, we need to really address that, because county development plans are going to be done in counties in the next 12 months, 18 months. And we need to protect, to keep local people living in the localities. So look at a wonderful seminar. Keep up the good work, ministers, TDs and everyone. And I am very encouraged by what I'm listening to. Thank you very much, Emer.
Oh, that's great to hear. And thanks so much. It's great to hear from people who have both political experience and also industry experience in the industry that we're talking about here today. One of the questions that's come in is from Quiva Liffey. She's suggesting that we should give grants to potential home builders or constructors to place sustainable energy sources, such as solar panels on homes, so as that they become environmentally friendly insulators. I know we've done a huge amount of work through grants through Sustainable Energy Ireland in terms of grants for people who are private owners, if you like. But there's also a lot going on in the local authority space. Senator John Cummins, I might bring you in here. I know you've fought for a lot of funding for this kind of measure through local authority streams. Would you like to explain to us about that?
Yeah, thanks very much, Emer. Look, you've highlighted some of it there yourself. There are obviously grants in place through Sustainable Energy Ireland for private homes. We have the Warmer Home Scheme for individuals and families that are on the fuel allowance. We are committed to a large retrofitting scheme across our local authority stock and that will be ramped up over the next number of years to try and meet our targets in accordance with the climate bill. But very good suggestions being put forward, and Emer will take them away ourselves in our own subgroup, and we'll talk about that along with Minister Burke. But just to say finally, because I probably won't get to come in again, Emer, the rebuild in Ireland was often ridiculed by commentators and the opposition, but what Rebuild in Ireland done is it put the foundation in place in order to deliver homes over the next number of years. Without it, we would not be where we are today, and we would not be able to get where we are going to get over the next number of years. And I'm often asked, what's the difference between your party and the opposition? Well, the difference is that our party is about using every mechanism possible to deliver housing. We're not hung up on who builds housing or how housing is built. And I don't believe any individual or family who moves into a new home cares who builds that house, whether it's the LDA, the council, the approved housing bodies, public-private partnerships, or a private builder. The opposition would have us wait and prolong the housing crisis. That's not what this government is doing. We're serious about addressing it. We have the Affordable Housing Bill and the LDA, which has been teased out here, and we are going to deliver for individuals and families right across this country.
Absolutely, and thanks so much, Senator Cummins, for that. Motion 5.4, the results are in, and it's 96.4% in favour. Listen, thank you so much to everybody for tuning in this morning. I think we've had a really engaging and really fruitful discussion. It was great to hear from the two ministers who are involved in the big significant pieces of legislation coming down the tracks in this field, the Affordable Housing Bill and the Land Development Agency Bill. I think Fine Gael has done so much in this area, and it's really up to all of us as members, as as councillors, as politicians, to promote that message, to let people know that we have brought in the biggest housing budget in the history of the state, that we are delivering protections for renters, that we are bringing in measures that tackle affordability, that we're bringing in the LDA on a legislative statutory footing so as that we can bring state land that's lying idle in the middle of a housing crisis into use, that can be the land that actually delivers homes. There's so much going on in this space, and I really do believe that these measures are going to make a huge difference, a difference to people like Thelma, like Clodagh, and like all of our contributors here today. Thank you so much again for tuning in today, and enjoy the rest of the Ardèche.